My girlfriend stole $11,000 from our joint account to vacation in the Maldives with her ex. But when her cards got declined at the resort, he dumped her for her younger sister, and she lost everything. I'm 27 years old, work in finance, and like 8 months ago, I found out that my girlfriend of 2 years was using me as, basically, a pawn in some twisted game to get back with her ex. And when I say she used me, I'm not exaggerating. The girl literally stole thousands of dollars from me and went on a luxury vacation with the guy while I thought we had a future together. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I met Haley at Preston's housewarming party like 2.5 years ago. Preston is one of my best friends from college, and he'd bought his first house, so obviously he threw this huge party to celebrate. I was there with a beer in my hand, talking to a group of people I didn't know very well, when this girl comes out of nowhere and spills her drink all over my shoes. And it wasn't just a little bit. I mean, my white Nikes were soaked with what I think was vodka cranberry or something like that. She turned super red and started apologizing like crazy, saying someone had pushed her, and she was so sorry. And honestly, she was so cute when she was embarrassed that I couldn't get mad. She offered to pay for dry cleaning. I told her not to worry about it, and we ended up talking all night. That was Haley, 24 years old at the time, worked in marketing for a mid-sized company, super smart, funny, with that energy that makes you feel like you're the only person in the room when you're talking to her. We started dating like a week after the party. The first dates were amazing. You know, that phase where everything is perfect and exciting and you can't stop thinking about the other person. She'd tell me stories about her work, about her friends, about her family, and she also talked quite a bit about her ex-boyfriend. Her ex was named Reed, and according to Haley, he was basically the worst guy in the world. Tattoo artist, stereotypical bad boy type, treated her like garbage, was manipulative, controlling, the whole thing. She told me they'd broken up like 6 months before we met, and that it had been super toxic, that it had taken her a long time to recover from that relationship. I, like an idiot, believed every word and even felt this weird pride about being the good guy who came after the asshole, you know what I mean? Like I was going to show her how a real man should treat her. Looking back, all those stories about Reed were too detailed, too frequent, like she couldn't stop talking about him even when she supposedly hated him. But at the time, I didn't see the red flags. Our relationship moved fast, I guess. By 6 months, we were practically living together. She'd spend like 4 or 5 nights a week at my apartment. It was all very natural, very comfortable, and I was completely in love. We talked about the future, about traveling together, about eventually moving to a bigger place. All that shit you talk about when you think you've found the right person. It was her idea to open a joint savings account, actually. She pitched it to me as something romantic, like, hey, let's put money in there for our Europe trip we want to take. It'll be our adventure account. And I thought it was sweet, that it showed commitment, that she was as into this as I was. So we opened the account. I started depositing like $500 a month. She supposedly also put in money, though it was never as much as me. But she always had some reasonable excuse about unexpected expenses or whatever. The next few months were, I don't know, normal, I guess. We had our ups and downs like any couple, but nothing serious. She was really active on social media, always posting pictures of us, stories from our dates, really selling the image of the perfect couple. Her best friend from high school, Stephanie, also hung out with us pretty often, and she seemed to genuinely like me, which is always a good sign, right? Or so I thought. Haley would mention Reed from time to time still, always in the context of how lucky she was to have left him behind, how happy she was now with me. I never suspected anything weird. Never checked her phone or any of that shit because, honestly, I trusted her completely. Everything changed on a Tuesday morning like 8 months ago. Haley woke up early like always, gave me a kiss, told me she loved me, that she'd see me that night, the whole normal routine. She left for work. I left for work. A completely ordinary day. Except she didn't come back that night. At first, I wasn't too worried. I thought maybe she'd stayed late at the office or gone out with her friends and forgot to tell me. I texted her. Nothing. Called her. Straight to voicemail. By 10 at night, I was starting to really worry, like thinking about calling hospitals or the police or something. But then I got a really short text that said something like, I need time for myself. Don't worry. I'm fine. I'll contact you soon. And that was it. She didn't respond to my next 20 messages asking what the hell was going on, if she was okay, if I'd done something wrong. Nothing. The next few days were a total nightmare. I tried contacting Stephanie, but she wasn't responding either. I went to Haley's work, and they told me she'd requested indefinite leave, which seemed super weird to me because she'd never mentioned anything about needing time off. I checked our social media and saw that she'd archived all our photos together, like she basically erased our relationship from public existence. I was confused, hurt, angry, all at the same time, but there was also part of me that thought maybe she really did need space for some reason, and eventually she'd explain everything and we could fix it. I was a complete idiot, basically. Like a week and a half passed and I still didn't know anything. That's when I decided to check our joint savings account. I don't know why I hadn't done it before. I guess I didn't want to think about that possibility. And there it was. The account was basically empty. We had like $11,000 saved. I'd put in the vast majority of that money over almost 2 years, and there was like $200 left. My first thought was that it had been hacked or something, but when I checked the transaction history, I saw that the withdrawals had been made from her account, with her password, all technically legitimate. The biggest withdrawal, like $8,000, had been made Monday night, literally the night before she disappeared. The other withdrawals had been in the following days. I called the bank in complete panic, and the person on the other end was super unhelpful. Basically told me that since it was a joint account, she had every right to withdraw the money and there was nothing they could do. I asked if they could tell me where the cards had been used or something, and after like half an hour of talking to supervisors and threatening legal action, they told me most of the charges had been made abroad. Specifically, in the Maldives. The fucking Maldives. I started Googling what was in the Maldives that cost that much money and found this super exclusive luxury resort that cost like $2,000 a night, and I had this horrible hunch that she was there. I called the resort, which was a surreal experience because I was sitting in my apartment in sweatpants, calling a 5-star hotel on the other side of the world. The receptionist had that refined accent typical of luxury service and confirmed that yes, they had a reservation under Haley's name for 2 weeks, and she'd checked in 4 days ago. I asked if she was alone, and there was an awkward pause before she told me that information was confidential. But the reservation was for 2 people. I asked for the other person's name, and after a lot of begging, she told me the room was registered under the name Mr. and Mrs. Walker. Reed's last name is Walker. I know because Haley mentioned his full name enough times when she told me her horror stories about him. Everything started making sense in the most horrible, the way possible. I sat in my living room for I don't know how long, just processing what I'd just discovered. My girlfriend of 2 years had stolen our joint savings, had flown to a luxury resort in the Maldives, and was there with her supposedly horrible ex-boyfriend, using my money to pay for their romantic vacation. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that it almost didn't seem real. Like, this stuff happens in movies, not in the real life of a 27-year-old accountant who just wanted a normal relationship. 2 days later, I got a message from Stephanie. She told me we needed to talk, that she had information I should know, and gave me the address of a coffee shop near my work. I went, because honestly I needed answers, and she was basically my only connection to Haley at that point. When I got there, Stephanie looked uncomfortable and guilty, which should have given me a clue about what was coming. We sat down, and she started telling me the whole story. And I swear, with the word she said, I wanted to throw up more. Turns out the entire relationship with me had been a lie from the beginning. Haley had never gotten over Reed. In fact, she'd been obsessed with him the entire time we were together. When Reed left her, she was devastated and basically swore she'd do whatever it took to get him back. Starting to date me was part of her plan to make him jealous, to prove to him she could be with someone else, someone stable with money. Stephanie told me that Haley had used her too, asking her to spy on Reed, to find out who he was dating, what he was doing, all that information. And apparently during our entire relationship, Haley had been in contact with Reed, sending him photos of us, updates about our life, basically rubbing in his face how happy she was without him. The part that really destroyed me was when Stephanie told me that Haley had told her, like 3 months before disappearing, that her plan had worked, that Reed had finally admitted he missed her and wanted to try again. But Reed didn't have money. His work as a tattoo artist barely let him survive, and he definitely couldn't pay for a luxury vacation. So Haley decided she'd use the money from our joint savings account, the money I'd deposited religiously every month, thinking it was for our future together, to finance her romantic reunion with Reed. Stephanie told me Haley had planned everything meticulously, even practiced her goodbye message to me so it would sound vague enough that I wouldn't suspect immediately, but final enough that I wouldn't desperately look for her. I asked Stephanie why she was telling me all this now, and she started crying and told me she couldn't keep being complicit in this, and that she'd thought it was just a silly game at first, but it had gotten completely out of control, and that I didn't deserve what they were doing to me. She gave me screenshots of conversations between her and Haley, where Haley literally made fun of me, called me her personal bank, said horrible things about how boring it was to be with me, but that it was worth it for the money and stability. Reading those messages was, I don't know, like having my soul ripped out. This person I'd shared my life with, my bed, my future plans, saw me as nothing more than a means to an end. I left that coffee shop with Stephanie, and honestly, I don't remember how I got home. What I do remember is sitting at my computer and starting to make a list of everything we shared, everything she had access to, and then I started systematically cutting her off from everything. I removed her from the joint account that was left, changed all my passwords, deleted her as a beneficiary on my insurance, canceled the additional credit card I'd given her. Basically, any financial connection we had, I destroyed. I also called my bank and reported the fraud, though they told me they probably couldn't do much because technically she had permission to use the account. But here's the thing, and this is where maybe I got a little vindictive. I also started withdrawing my contributions from everything else. Turns out a lot of the subscriptions we shared, Netflix, Spotify, the gym, I was paying for them. I canceled them all. She had my card saved on Amazon and other online stores for purchases. I deleted it. Basically, I did a complete inventory of every dollar I was putting into her life and I cut it off. And the best part, or worst, depending on how you look at it, is that I remembered I'd paid the deposit and initial reservations for the Maldives resort when she made them, because she said her credit card was having problems or some excuse like that. I called the resort again and explained the situation, that there was fraud with my card, and after like 3 hours of being on the phone with their billing department, I managed to get them to put a hold on the account. Like 2 months went by, 67 days to be exact, before Haley tried to contact me again. During that time, I basically went through all the stages of grief, denial, anger, bargaining, all that shit. My friends were amazing. Preston especially felt super guilty because technically it was at his party where I'd met her, though obviously none of this was his fault. I started going to therapy because, honestly, I needed to process all this shit with a professional. And slowly, very slowly, I started feeling a little better, a little less like a complete idiot. Then Haley showed up at my apartment on a Sunday afternoon. She looked terrible, like she'd lost weight, had dark circles under her eyes, her clothes were wrinkled, nothing like the perfectly put-together girl she'd always been. She started banging on my door and yelling that she needed to talk to me, that she could explain everything, that she'd made a terrible mistake. I almost didn't open the door for her, but there was a part of me that needed to hear what excuse she could possibly have to justify what she'd done. I opened the door but didn't. Let her in. We just stood there in the hallway. Haley started with this story about how she'd had an existential crisis, that Reed had manipulated her again, that she really loved me and had been stupid. Basically everything you'd think someone in that situation would say. She cried, begged me to forgive her, said she'd return the money somehow. I asked her directly about using my money to go on vacation with her ex, and she tried to minimize it, saying it had been an error in judgment, that she was confused, that Reed had promised her things that turned out to be lies. I asked her how they'd gotten back from the resort if I'd blocked my card, and she admitted, after a lot of pressure, that her credit cards had been declined at the hotel, that the resort had held their passports until they paid the balance, and that she'd had to call her parents to financially rescue her. Apparently her parents had paid like $15,000 to cover all the hotel charges and return flights, and now she owed them that money, plus what she'd spent from our account. I told her to leave, that I never wanted to see her again, that we were completely done. She got hysterical, screaming that I was cruel, that I couldn't just leave her after 2 years together, that I owed her at least a chance to fix things. I told her she destroyed any chance of fixing anything the moment she decided to use our relationship as a game to win back her ex, and I closed the door in her face. I heard her crying in the hallway for like 10 minutes before she finally left. I thought that would be the end. But Haley couldn't just leave me alone. Like a week later, she started posting stuff on social media, vague stories about me though she never mentioned my name directly. Stuff about men who pretend to be good guys but are controlling and abusive, about toxic relationships where she was the victim, basically trying to flip the narrative completely. Some people who didn't know the full story started messaging, me asking if everything was okay, if the accusations were true, and that made me furious because she hadn't just stolen from me and betrayed me, now she was trying to destroy my reputation too. This is where Stephanie became my unexpected hero. She saw Haley's posts and decided enough was enough. She posted the screenshots she'd shown me, the conversations where Haley admitted to using me, her plans to steal the money, everything. She added a long post explaining how Haley had manipulated her too, how it had all been an elaborate plan to get back with Reed, and basically exposed Haley completely. The posts went viral among our social circle, were shared hundreds of times, and suddenly everyone knew the truth. The consequences for Haley were, honestly, more severe than I expected. She lost her job because apparently her boss saw all the drama on social media and decided that kind of behavior didn't reflect well on the company. Reed, the ex she'd ruined everything for, left her like two weeks after they got back, because turns out he'd started dating Haley's younger sister, who's like 22, and basically decided the younger sister was a better option. I couldn't have written a more poetic ending if I'd tried. Haley's parents, who'd paid all that money to rescue her, were furious and basically cut off contact with her for a while, from what I heard. The final chapter of this whole mess happened like 3 months ago. I was already dating someone new, Caitlin, who's basically everything opposite to Haley. Honest, direct, with her own stable income. We were at my apartment watching a movie when there was a knock on the door. It was Haley, again, but this time, she wasn't coming to beg for reconciliation. She was coming to ask me for money, specifically to help her pay off the credit card debt she'd accumulated trying to pay her parents back. She told me she owed like $20,000 to various cards and the interest was killing her, that she just needed a small loan to stay afloat. I looked at her standing there, visibly desperate, with Caitlin listening to everything from inside the apartment, and I felt absolutely nothing. Not anger, not pity, not satisfaction at her suffering, just this kind of calm emptiness. I told her no, that she'd made her choices and now had to live with the consequences, and that I honestly hoped she'd find a way to move forward, but that I wouldn't be part of that solution. I closed the door and went back to the couch with Caitlin, and that was it. Looking at all this in retrospect, I guess I should feel more devastated or traumatized or whatever. And I'm not gonna lie, there were moments where I really was messed up about all this. But there's also a part of me that's grateful it happened when it did and not later. Like imagine if we'd gotten married or had kids or something. I dodged a giant bullet, basically. I learned to trust my instincts again. Not to ignore red flags just because someone is attractive or fun or whatever. And I found Caitlin, who's shown me what a real relationship based on mutual respect and honesty looks like. Last week I saw Haley at the supermarket for the first time in months. She saw me too, and for a second I thought she was going to approach. But finally she just looked down and kept walking down another aisle. I bought my stuff, went home to Caitlin, we cooked dinner together, and I didn't think about Haley for the rest of the night. And that, I guess, is the best revenge I could have, just moving on and being happy while she deals with the mess she created. I didn't get my money back and probably never will, but I gained something much more valuable, which is knowing exactly what kind of relationship I escaped from and what kind of person I really want in my life. So yeah, that's my story about how my girlfriend stole $11,000 from me to go on vacation with her ex, and how in the end everything turned out better than I could have imagined.